I bought this cover a couple years ago, this awning from Lowe's, and in the last couple years, the wind and weather have ruined the fabric, and this in this spring finally tore and came off. So in this video, what I'm doing is making a new cover to put over that awning. Um, right here, just I didn't have enough. It was the fabric I bought, the awning fabric, wasn't quite big enough, so I'm sewing the two halves together here. Um, and in retrospect, I'm not sure if this is the best way to do it because I got to cut it into pieces anyway. But this is the way I did it. So I sewed the two halves face to face together, and then I ironed that seam to the one side, and then I sewed it down. I'm not sure what that kind of seam is called, but that's what I'm doing here. Is I'm ironing this that flap to one side and then pinning it with some, some pins, and then won't fit through my sewing machine in a big bulk like that. So I'm rolling up either side so I can run that seam through my machine. And then here's that. When I'm sewing, I can't tell what the camera sees, so sorry about the shot. There's going to be a lot more of these through the video. But you can see that I'm just kind of going over that seam there and sewing it to the one side, um, to reinforce, also to make that seam look a little nicer. And then once I got that, I'm ironing it down too. I think I was a little worried that the iron, when I first started the project, a hot iron was going to melt this fabric because I didn't really know what's in it. But so it was probably a little cool there. And I ended up just turning it up to cottons, and this is like a canvas kind of material. Anyway, took the old uh, cover off, and that's what I got here, and I just matched them up, and um, it was pretty well torn in half. So I took the it's longer across the front than it is the sides. So there's four pieces, but the front and back are the same, and each side's the same. So what I did was cut these pieces to match those off the old one, and then I just used the new pieces. Hopefully that makes sense. So there's four pieces that I'm cutting out here, two two for the front and back, and then two for the sides. And then what the next thing I'm doing here is the top of the center is open, and there's another little cover above that. So I'm hemming the tops and bottoms here of the side pieces of the front and back, excuse me. And then the next thing I'll do is match the front and back to the sides, and then trim them in a way that I know that they're going to come together when I get through sewing. So I just match up the tops that are already hemmed to the bottom, and then I'll mark where I want the hem to be, so that I know even if it's not symmetrical all the way around, they'll match up. So and I knew that I could stretch that fabric when I pull over there. So this, you kind of see what I'm talking about here. There's a little bit extra, and I did cut it a little long so I could do this. Um, and then I kind of pin those where I want it to be, and then I'm going to iron it down. And that's just so it's easier to sew it up. The only reason I'm ironing it before I sew it. And then you can see it's easier to see there too. There's a little extra fabric. So I sew this down um, in a way that I know that it's going to match up to the other two adjacent pieces. And I do this on both side pieces. And then I take the front and one of the sides, and I sew those two together, and then I do the same thing with the back and the other side. But I sew these together face to face, and then I open it up, and I'm ironing that flap down, same way I did in the first scene where I was sewing the rolled fabric together, and I do the same thing here. Sew them together, and then I roll the side so it'll fit through my sewing machine, and then sew that flap down, the the seam. And then once I got those front and side and back and side, once those were done, then I connected them together. Um, well, I think that's pretty obvious. But I did it the same way. There's just a ton more bulk, the more assembled it gets. So, but I go face to face, and then I'll iron that seam down, and then um, finish the seam that way, and then so this is finishing the seam here, and then I do this same process when I can connect the last two sides together, which is bringing it kind of full circle. So what I'm doing here is those squares. I'm going to have 4 squares total. I'm going to have 4 big squares, 4 little squares, and then I'll fold them into triangles, and I'll iron the triangles. And what those triangles will be are the corners of the cover, because it's kind of stretched over the center of this metal frame, and the only way it's held down is in the corners, and that's what holds this in. So you'll stretch it over that, and then the the bars that of the metal frame of the awning will come into these corner pieces. So it's kind of a reinforced corner is what it is. And so here I got them all cut out, and then I'm just ironing them flat. And then I don't know if I made it clear, but I'm going to do a big triangle with a smaller triangle on top of that. I'll sew those triangles together in a way that you can, the bottom triangle will accept that bar. So here I'm sewing the 2 triangles together. And then once I get those corner pieces all made, the next thing I do is I double-sided tape them to the corners of the fabric, and I kind of trimmed them to fit. And then now I'm sewing those corner pieces onto the awning itself here. That's what I'm doing here. So you can see there's the 2 triangles that are sewed together, and then I'm just putting those on. And that's pretty much the last step. I left the awning, the top cover, there's a smaller cover above this cover that I'm replacing. It was still in pretty good shape, so it looked fine, so I left that. But I got enough fabric left over, I could redo that if I need to in the future. Anyway, get these corners sewn on, and then I stretched it back over that metal cover, which you'll see here in just a sec. And then there's that kind of a side view and the front view and a back view of that cover. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and like. Thank you.